Hello, everyone. Welcome back to this journey. If you would like to start at episode 1, it is linked for you in the description box below. In this episode, I will introduce the next energetic tool to you guys. Tool number 6 is called Isolation, with 2 available variations, one being voluntary and the other being involuntary isolation. If you have already listened to the first episode of this podcast, then you might recollect that this 4-year journey started back in August of 2020 for me. Back then, I was still self-employed in the events and exhibitions industry. But if you remember how the world was shaped back in 2020, events and exhibitions were not taking place. As I like to say, the world had gone mad, drastic measures were taken, and our industry was actually one of the worst hit industries during that year and even parts of the following year. So for me, it meant I couldn't work. We didn't have any projects, and I had a lot of free time. In other words, my life changed very suddenly in an extreme manner, and I could not distract myself through work or basically through much of anything else. A few months into this life phase, I understood why everything took place at that particular moment in time, and I understood the purpose of the timing. But right at the beginning, when everything had just unraveled, I tried hard to distract myself from the pain of all that had happened in the span of just a few days. So I contacted a few places nearby to where I lived, and I actually offered to work there for free. For free because I didn't immediately need a new source of income, and I knew it's just a temporary thing. And secondly, I wanted to start as soon as possible. So I offered, I think, 3 different companies my services for free. They seemed very interested, but not a single one of them actually ever called me back. When I told a friend about this, she replied, "Oh, I think you're not meant to be busy and distracted now. I think you are supposed to be in isolation." Yeah, I guess she was right. And I thought about that for a little while. And though I didn't like it, but I resonated with that message. And so I trusted the message and I decided not to follow up with that idea anymore and accept whatever this path is all about and enter that state of being that is apparently asked of me. That meant isolation, and in this case, it was involuntary. I didn't want it, but I saw that the path of distraction and quick moving on was not bearing any fruit, and so I accepted it, and I took it one day at a time from there on. The second variation of this tool, a voluntary isolation or a self-isolation, is then something that I applied shortly afterwards. So once I familiarized myself with the new energetic state of being, and the longer I actually walked this path, the more frequently I voluntarily self-isolated. So why is isolation an energetic tool? Well, for a few reasons. Reason number 1, when you are experiencing a spiritual awakening, a dark night of the soul, or an energetic boot camp, that's actually an expression I oftentimes use to describe this phase of my life, your energy field in those times is going through an intense transformational process. So if you are constantly surrounded by other people and their energies, then you easily become enmeshed. Boundaries are very fleeting, and the transformational process can get disturbed and will then require much more time to take place. Reason number 2, you are suddenly processing a huge load of data, much of which is multi-layered and multidimensional. And if you cannot concentrate and focus on what is going on, you run the risk of losing yourself in the process. Things can get very confusing very fast when you are constantly surrounded by other people. Reason number 3, a big chunk of that transformational process is done by you together with your cosmic self, your higher self, and, for example, guides involved in the process. Meaning that really only a small part of those phases and what you're experiencing is taking place in coordination or cooperation with, let's call them, human helpers. And for the majority of people, when you go through that phase, those energetic helpers, they're very quiet. Their messages are very, very subtle. And the intuitive guidance you receive is very quiet. So if you are constantly in loud and busy environments, you won't notice the messages that are trying to reach you, especially at the beginning when you're still unfamiliar with the style of how your higher self or your guides communicate with you. And reason number 4, a very important, maybe the most important part of every healing process that you go through along the path is the grounding in and basically physically incorporating of the new healed state of being. And that grounding in and that physically incorporating truly always only takes place in an isolated and quiet moment. Now, getting to the next part, how to apply this tool. Well, just with any other tool that I've introduced to you guys so far, and the tools that are still to follow in the next episodes, it's important to remember that they are meant to serve us and to have that perspective. Beyond that, I guess it really depends on your life situation. Do you live alone, or do you have a busy household with a partner, children, pets, etc.? Can you take days or weeks at a time to retreat into isolation? Or do you only get a few minutes per day where you can just be by yourself in quietness and process the energetic experiences that are taking place? So with this tool, I will not tell you how exactly to apply it because I know it really depends on every person's life circumstances, but I can only give a recommendation, and the recommendation is to try to incorporate self-isolation as much as you can, even if it means to get the people around you involved to a certain degree, ask for their help, and ask for them to somehow go through this with you. To be frank with you, it's not a very popular tool, especially at the beginning, when you consider we live in a time where on this physical plane we have reached the peak of distraction possibilities and temptations. So from personal experience, I can tell you that at some point it's actually possible to truly enjoy this tool and even crave the isolation, the quietness when you have gone through a busy phase again. But it really takes some time getting used to it, and you should be patient also with what you're experiencing, and at some point you will see the benefits of it. I'm sure of that. Well, everyone, that's it for now for this episode and this energetic tool. Feel free to share your experiences with isolation and self-isolation. And if you are currently going through a dark night of the soul, a spiritual awakening, or any other intense transformational process, and you need help with that, then you can book a personal consultation with me. The link for that is in the description box below.